A boy in anaphylactic shock in the back seat of a taxi. His face turned pale. His head drooped slightly. His body convulsed. The taxi driver, one hand supporting the boy's neck to keep his airway open, the other trembling as he dialed emergency services. He maintained the boy's breathing rhythm, while racing through red lights as if in a race against time. Upon reaching the hospital entrance, he carried the boy straight into the emergency lobby. Behind them, a luxurious car skidded to a halt. A man jumped out, frantically shouting, "Owen, where's my son? Has anyone seen my son?" When his eyes landed on the person holding the child, he stood frozen. The driver wore an old jacket, hair matted with sweat, and sleeves stained with the boy's orange nasal discharge. The man recognized him and felt as if his heart was being squeezed. It was the very person he had scorned 3 days prior. A moment of silence. 3 days. Enough time for someone once despised to become the savior of his most precious life. And the story began from that very ride. When Gregory exited the taxi, he tipped an extra $5, not out of courtesy, but to end the conversation like purchasing a cheap item. Marcus simply nodded. "Thank you, sir," and drove off. On the way back, it was still raining. Marcus turned on the music, a wordless symphony. He thought of his mother, still undergoing home treatment, the woman who had saved every penny for him to study medicine before his father passed away suddenly. Marcus had dropped out in his 3rd year, shelving his dream of wearing a white coat to take on various jobs, eventually settling with this taxi. But he never stopped learning. Every night he studied online about first aid and acute reactions. In his trunk was a basic medical kit. No one paid him for that, but he always believed that one day what he learned would not be in vain. That day was sunny, a rare September day. Marcus was refueling when the app notified a new ride request. The pickup point was a suburban villa. Upon arrival, a panicked housekeeper rushed out, "Please, help me." The boy had a fever, then vomited, then turned blue. "The ambulance hasn't arrived yet." Marcus rushed in. Within 10 seconds he saw the boy, about 9 years old, curled up, eyes glazed, lips pale. On the table were peanut shells. Marcus immediately suspected anaphylactic shock. "Is he allergic to nuts?" "Yes, but I can't find the EpiPen." Marcus said no more. He gently picked up the boy, placed a damp towel on his neck, and ran back to the car. He called the nearest hospital, requesting readiness for anaphylactic shock, and explained the situation. While driving, he kept the boy's neck straight and said, "You'll be okay. I've studied this. Trust me, okay?" The boy blinked. A small tear fell onto Marcus's shirt, not clear whether from the boy or him. When the car stopped at the emergency entrance, 2 nurses rushed out. Marcus handed the boy to them, briefly explaining the anaphylactic shock without boasting. He sat down on a stone bench. Sweat soaked his back. 15 minutes later, a sleek black car arrived. A man jumped out, face pale with fear. It was Gregory. He saw Marcus. Their eyes met. Gregory slowly approached, voice trembling. "You're the taxi driver from the other day?" Marcus stood up and nodded. "Your grandson is okay now. I suspect it was anaphylactic shock. I'm sorry for not waiting for the ambulance. I just thought I lost my father once because emergency help came too late." Gregory said nothing. He stepped forward, placed both hands on Marcus's shoulders, then knelt. "Thank you. Without you—" Marcus froze. Bystanders watched, but no one spoke. Not a single word. Gregory stood up, gripping his hand tightly. "I never thought a taxi driver." Marcus smiled slightly. "The one who saved your son wasn't a taxi driver, just a son who once lost his father. If you've ever been underestimated because of your job, and they didn't know who you are or what you've been through, feel free to share in the comments if you'd like. Perhaps someone else needs to read it to feel stronger today. Marcus didn't elaborate further. He didn't boast about studying medicine, didn't emphasize his actions as heroic, didn't take photos, didn't live stream. After ensuring Owen was stable and transferred to the ICU, he quietly returned to his car, ready to leave like a delivery person who had completed a task. But Gregory wouldn't let him go. He wasn't someone easily moved. His world operated on results, money, and power. But today, seeing his only son lying motionless for 15 minutes before his eyes, unable to do anything, Gregory saw something he couldn't buy. And the man standing before him, with an old jacket, sweaty hands, still saying thank you out of habit, had brought that to him. Marcus. Gregory's voice was unusually calm and deep. I want to do something, not out of gratitude, but because I realize I was wrong. Very wrong. Marcus shook his head slightly, accustomed to declining social invitations. No need, Mr. Gregory. I just did what I could. You studied medicine, didn't you? Marcus was slightly surprised. You knew? Gregory smiled slightly. I have contacts at the hospital. The nurse recounted everything. The way you handled it, it wasn't something casually learned on YouTube. Marcus remained silent. Why did you quit? My father died. My mother got sick. Tuition was high, and no one sponsors the dreams of someone who has no time. Gregory paused. The last sentence struck him deeply. A man who once said in a strategic meeting, if someone can't keep up, just eliminate them. Now, he saw himself lagging in understanding human value. Do you want to go back? Marcus looked at him. No smile. Just the eyes of someone who once held a dream in both hands and had to fold it away. I always wanted to, but I don't think about it anymore. Gregory reached into his suit pocket and pulled out a business card. On the back, handwritten, Marcus, call me Monday morning. I'll take care of the rest. Marcus returned home. The modest rental room remained the same. The old wooden chair beside the bed, the photo of his mother, gray-haired, tired but resilient smile. He told her about today, not in detail, just said he had done the right thing. She held his hand. Her eyes glistened. You couldn't save your father, but you're saving others every day just by keeping this heart. Monday morning, Marcus arrived at Gregory's office. For the first time, he stepped into a building he once thought didn't belong to him. But this time, no one glared at him. The receptionist smiled, inviting him to sit. Gregory greeted him with a handshake, different from the friendly pats typical of businessmen. It was genuine. You won't have to pay tuition. I've contacted the private medical fund. They have a program for those who had to drop out due to family reasons. I used my connections to ensure your application is prioritized. Marcus was choked up. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just continue being the person you were that day. You don't need to prove anything. The world needs people like you in the right place they were born to be. Marcus received an email. Congratulations on being awarded a full scholarship. Your first class begins next month. He burst into tears. Not because he could study again, but because someone believed in what he once believed in when the world no longer cared. He returned to his car and accepted the first ride of the day. Though he was about to return to school, he drove a taxi for 2 more months to earn enough to care for his mother and thank life, in the way he understood, by continuing to serve others. Some stories aren't loud, not sensational, not flashy. They begin in silence and end with someone finding the path they once left behind. If you'd like to hear more stories like this, you know how not to miss them, right? The following month, at the opening ceremony of Newman Medical School, a 35-year-old freshman sat in the back row. Slightly wrinkled white shirt, old leather bag, but bright eyes. No longer gray inside. At the back of the auditorium, a middle-aged man sat quietly observing. Gregory Hale. No one recognized him, no press team, no selfies. He just watched Marcus as if seeing himself in another universe, where he once knew what helplessness felt like. And if one day you take a taxi, meet a driver who smiles and plays online medical lectures, ask him his name. Perhaps you've just met a future doctor, or an unsung hero. Neither of them anticipated it. But just 2 days after Marcus enrolled, the story appeared on social media. The housekeeper from Gregory's home, a single mother moved by Marcus not only saving Owen, but also gently reassuring her during panic, wrote a Facebook post. She recounted the entire event, from Owen's fever and her helplessness to how Marcus handled everything. He wasn't a doctor, not a nurse, not an emergency worker, just someone who had to abandon his dream because life was too harsh. But when my grandson needed someone to save him, it was he, a taxi driver, who was there without hesitation. The post was shared tens of thousands of times in less than 48 hours. Many left lengthy comments, sharing moments they were once looked down upon because of their profession, appearance, or background. The name Marcus began appearing in community forum posts, then spread to Reddit, LinkedIn, and finally local newspapers. On the third day after the post, Marcus was sitting in the library when a senior student approached. "Are you Marcus? The one who saved Owen?" Marcus hesitated and nodded slightly. The student extended her hand. "Thank you. Your story made me decide to re-enroll in nursing school. I dropped out 2 years ago because I was told I was too soft to care for people." Marcus smiled and shook her hand, unsure what to say. But his heart was full of gratitude, not for fame, but because someone else had just reclaimed their courage through his story. That evening, Marcus received an email from a major television network. "We'd like to feature you on our program, Real People, Real Power. What you did deserves to be seen." He declined. Not out of fear, but because he believed the story belonged to the moment it was real, not when it was wrapped in studio lights. Gregory Hale wasn't used to feeling beneath anyone. But after what happened with his son, he found himself increasingly alienated at cocktail parties, in boardrooms where growth metrics were worshipped like deities, and kindness was seen as weakness. He called his head of HR and requested a company-wide mandatory training session. Understanding and addressing professional bias in corporate culture. He also quietly asked legal to review the files of every employee terminated in the past 5 years, especially those dismissed under vague circumstances. A man who once believed in ruthless efficiency was now forced to confront the quiet damage left in its wake. One evening, as Marcus was heading home, his phone rang. "Gregory. Are you free? There's something I want to tell you. Just you." At a small cafe, Gregory opened up about someone from his past, a childhood friend named Elijah, also a taxi driver. Both loved math, but Elijah never got to attend college due to poverty. While Gregory climbed the ladder of success, Elijah kept driving. And one night, Elijah died of a stroke on the job. No one reached him in time. I couldn't save my friend. I didn't even know what his life had become. So when I saw you, saving my son, it felt like Elijah had come back, and this time I had a chance to set something right. Marcus had no words, but some silences mean more than any thank you ever could. 3 months later, Marcus officially began his first semester. On his first day of class, his professor asked, Why did you decide to return to medicine after all these years? Marcus hesitated, then replied, Because I can't forget the look in my father's eyes when he died in my arms. I can't change the past, but I can study to save someone else in the future, so they don't have to live with the helplessness I knew. The class fell silent. After class, a young student approached. You know, you're the reason I didn't drop out of this program. Marcus smiled. No, I didn't. But if that's true, maybe everything you thought was a mistake had a purpose. The next week, Marcus received an envelope from Gregory. Inside was a handwritten note, no embellishment, just a few direct lines. Marcus, a friend once taught me, true strength is choosing to stand with the weakest person in the room. That day, you stood with my son at his weakest. Here's my commitment. Once you graduate, if you want to open a community clinic, I'll be your first investor. G.H. quiet but never invisible. No one labeled Marcus a hero, no medals, no stage, just a quiet story, rippling outward like water, touching those who'd once been misjudged or left out. Have you ever been underestimated because of your job, your background, or how you look? Have you ever saved someone, maybe just with a small act, and no one noticed? If your story deserves to be heard, you can share it in the comments, because maybe it's the reason someone else won't give up today. The city wakes with the sound of horns, the rattle of shop shutters, and the hiss of the first coffee machine. For Marcus, mornings start earlier now, not to pick up fares, but to finish biomedical notes from the night before. He keeps to a routine like someone who was never famous. Even as his name is mentioned in an article by a renowned columnist titled The Hero in a Taxi Jacket and the Lesson for America's Leaders. The piece was shared nearly 1 million times in 2 weeks, not because it was shocking, but because it was true. A truth many had tasted, but never had the words for, the feeling of being underestimated at the very place you are giving your all. The feeling of being looked through like furniture in society. The feeling of being invisible, even in the story of your own life. From the overwhelming public response, a group of philanthropists came up with an idea. The Marcus Fund. Financial support for people who had to leave school due to family hardship, but still wished to return. Gregory was the first investor. But what made the fund special was its only rule. Recipients had to write and share their own stories, with others like them. Not to inspire, Marcus said during the fund's first meeting, but to dissolve the shame of having to stop once. No one chooses the circumstances they're born into, but everyone deserves a chance to rewrite how they continue. A month later, Marcus received a handwritten letter from a boy in another state. His name was Jacob, 14 years old. His mother worked as a janitor. His father was in prison. The letter read, I read your story. At school, some kids called me the son of a failure. But I'm not dropping out anymore. I want to study to become a nurse. The other day, my mom fainted while cleaning the hallway, and no one knew what to do. I want to be someone who knows how to help. Marcus held the letter in silence, not because he was overwhelmed, but because he knew, with certainty, this is how a generation gets healed, bit by bit. Marcus's old taxi was donated to a mobile first aid training program. They placed a line on the back bumper. This car once carried thousands. And one day, it carried someone who changed everything. As for Marcus, he kept studying, working part-time, writing, and listening to the stories of those who had never been asked, Who are you? For Gregory Hale, things didn't transform overnight. But there were cocktail parties he no longer attended, emails he began replying to with, I need more time to think, and people he started asking, Are you satisfied with how you're being treated here? He learned to sit down beside others when they were in pain, not to fix, but to understand. At a university leadership seminar, when asked what the greatest lesson of his career had been, he simply said, "A taxi driver once taught me that a brilliant mind can't save anyone if it isn't powered by the right heart." Marcus avoided the media, but one video still went viral, recorded by a student during his guest lecture on medicine and community. In it, he recalled the moment he saved young Owen, and ended with a line that made the entire auditorium rise in applause. "I'm not a doctor yet. I'm just someone who once felt helpless when my loved one died because no one came in time. And today, I'm learning to become the one who shows up before someone else has to live with the words, 'if only,' for the rest of their life." You get into a taxi. The driver doesn't say much, but something about his eyes makes you feel safe. Ask his name. You might just be riding with someone who once saved a life and is learning how to save hundreds more. If you've ever been judged just because of the job you do, if you've ever felt like you were too far behind to start again, let this story remind you. No one has the right to define your worth unless you let them. And sometimes the greatest things begin with one kind person at just the right moment.